I'm Professor Dana Redford, and I'm president of the Platform for Entrepreneurship Education in Portugal. My research area is entrepreneurship and public policy, and I've worked with various governments, including the US Department of Commerce, the European Commission, and various governments throughout Europe, looking at how we can develop more and better entrepreneurship. If we look at the topic of strategies of growth, you need to be thinking about how you are going to grow your company over time. We might want to be considering various strategies on how to do that. We would look at the various aspects and dimensions of growth. There are various ways in which you will be growing your organization, looking at the human resource area, looking at the revenues area, and how do you determine and understand that. If we look at strategic innovation for growth, we might discuss three different strategies. We might talk about sort of intensive growth strategies, looking at current markets and seeing how we would develop this further. We would explain also the integrative growth strategy. That means growing within an industry and looking at that industry in its complete value chain. If we look at diversification, we talk about growing outside of a given industry. And finally, we're also going to consider talking about working globally. And the main growth strategy of most entrepreneurs is looking at a larger market and looking at how to work globally. First, we can talk about why the majority of entrepreneurs don't scale and make large organizations. Many times we talk about two types of entrepreneurship. We talk about entrepreneurship that is sort of a more lifestyle entrepreneur, and then we talk about high impact entrepreneurship. And many times we talk about why different companies don't grow, that they aren't able to get out of that startup phase. And that startup phase is one of the riskiest parts of a venture. And many times that's because they don't have the right people in place. Maybe it's not the right time. The market entry strategy was incorrect. But we need to look at the various dimensions of growth. As you can see in this graphic, we have a qualitative growth and a quantitative growth. If we look at the qualitative growth, we're talking about the strategic aspects. We're talking about market share, brand awareness, and we talk about how to qualify those aspects. Of course, we have quantitative measures of growth. Those quantitative measures are financial growth, return on investment, profit, revenues. We also talk about organizational growth. Maybe it's a question of how many employees you have or what departments are in or developed in the organization, and the use of those assets as well. If we're going to talk about growth strategies in entrepreneurship, we're going to talk about entrepreneurship that is based on opportunity. If we look at the Harvard working definition of entrepreneurship, it is the pursuit of opportunity beyond the resources you currently control. And the growth strategy is to find out how we can acquire those resources that we don't have. If we talk about the strategic innovation process, many times we're talking about breaking the mold of a given industry. We're talking about how if you get into a market early, you might be able to get a foothold. Many times it's called having a beachhead. That means as you attack or go into a market, you use small niche markets to then attack larger ones. Larger companies typically wait to see. And if you talk about how a growth entrepreneur and how growth strategies work, you will really understand that it's a yin-yang. That is to say that as an entrepreneur, you understand how to partner with and work with large companies, and also integrating their business into your business model. So if we talk about strategic innovation, we can talk about it here in the question of, say, science and some sort of invention. We can also talk about a question of looking at a specific industry. And normally when we talk about innovation, innovation comes in between the invention and the market insight. This question of to grow or not to grow is many times determined for us if we look at markets that have demand for our products and services, a question of the size of those markets, And we can also talk about some leadership characteristics and some success factors insofar as leadership. Of course, there are stages of the development of a company, and we can also talk about what is the focus of each of these stages. In the startup, you are looking for gaining initial capital, seed capital, to prove a product. We're looking at taking and finding our first customers. We look at finding those distribution channels and how we integrate into the larger value chain of large companies. And then as we go through these growth cycles, as we get to the early growth phase, we talk about how cash flow is going to be exceedingly important. And many entrepreneurs never get out of the early stages of growth because of a failure of managing cash flow properly. You also are looking at then markets. And how are you going to do specific marketing and have different channels there for your markets? If you look at high growth is about managing resources. It's about gaining further capital for expansion, and also about developing managerial skills or getting those managerial skills from outside people who might be able to assist you. And of course, as you talk about the more mature stages of an organization, you come towards more of a stable growth phase, and then you're talking about how do you get that innovation process going again? How do you find those success factors that originally grew the company and now need to be reinvigorated to spur on further growth? If we talk about factors that affect growth, definitely market size and characteristics. We talk about the competition. We talk about intellectual property and perhaps the predictability of how a market will act. We may also speak about managerial factors, and this is one of these aspects of the growth strategy entrepreneur, and that is the fact that growth entrepreneurs many times are triathletes. And in being able to work in this area, you may need to get professional assistance and reevaluate how you will be managing your company over time. If we talk about some of the problems in leadership, again, it's that question of a transition. It's that question of when you've exceeded your managerial capabilities and need to call in a professional manager. We can look at many cases like this, including Google, for example, and calling on Eric Schmidt at the right time to take over from the original two founders. If we look at this, that also can be a very difficult process for growth entrepreneurs. Many times, growth entrepreneurs and high-impact entrepreneurs will be of a single-minded vision and really have that discipline to be able to move on. We also want to make sure that the leadership does not feel isolated as the organization grows. You can imagine as a growth company comes into being, not always is the ability to know everybody as you used to when it started because of the growth in employees. This question of scalability is also perhaps sometimes related to the inability to understand and respond to a new business environment. And many times this can also be a question of leadership. If we look at the frameworks for growth, well, that's really about scanning the environment. It's about planning a growth strategy over time and also hiring and making those key hires, as I said before. If we talk about creating a growth culture, that is to enthuse and put in an enthusiasm to the culture, the business culture itself, and aim towards growth. We may also want to build a strategic advisory board. And in fact, this is a good idea for almost any entrepreneur. I remember once in a venture that I had, we had more strategic advisors than we did actual employees. But this helped us grow, and it enabled us to have a further reach and ability to find out about different opportunities. If we talk about growth strategies, we can highlight these three strategies: a sort of intensive growth strategy, an integrative growth strategy, and diversification strategies. So these strategic options are looking at questions of markets and industry. If you look at an intensive growth strategy, that's really looking at exploiting an opportunity in the current market. And if we're talking about an integrative growth strategy, we're really talking about integrating into a whole industry. Now, a diversification strategy then takes it from within an industry and looks at beyond just a current market or industry and how it fits into the full value chain. Of course, much of growth strategies have to do with going international. This is to exploit those opportunities in an international environment, being of extreme importance. Investing in and acquiring businesses which are outside your core competency can be a strategy to go international and to reach out and cross industry lines. When we're talking about current strategies, you can talk about the synergies between different aspects of not only within your company or industry, but also with other companies. Talk about acquiring the products and services, sort of unrelated to the core of the company. You might also want to talk about a conglomeration of a diversification of acquiring other companies that fit into the value chain of what it is that you do. There's a concept called born globals, and that is to say that companies that start out looking at global markets. Now, this represents about 25% of all companies, and that means those organizations that within the first 3 years will look to work internationally. This sort of drives a competitive advantage. It can be coming from outsourcing, it can be coming from selling in different markets, it can be coming from using your product line and addressing some of those products for different markets, some in the emerging markets or in the developing world. But this concept of born globals is something that is characteristic of a growth organization typically. If you talk about the characteristics of successful globalization, well, there you talk about a vision. And entrepreneurs are great about having wonderful visions of where they're going and looking in the future. And that sort of path being continual and constant. If you look at the international experience of those people that you hire, those managers and others who join the organization later, you want to think about some of the strong networks that they have, and we'll be talking about that in another video. If you talk about some of the technology, you may have a technology that's coming first to the market, and that can be also a unique asset. You have other links to products and services and extending that, and coordinating an organization across different geographies can be a big challenge. But this idea of a growth strategy, of being a born global, and always thinking about an international market from the very beginning. If we talk about the sort of action plan of growth strategies and entrepreneurs, we talk about identifying markets, we talk about managing and scaling factors, we talk about the ability to grow the business and some of those aspects that affect it. We also talk about what is most appropriate for the business model and the business itself. Identifying potential international markets and products and services that might be complementary, and developing a plan for globalization as being one of the main points in terms of looking at a growth strategy. So I wish you the best of luck in looking at and developing your own growth strategies and being a growth-oriented entrepreneur. Thank you.